Hey class, today we're going to be talking about how to write an equation from graphs. So when we have to write equations from a line and we're given a graph, we have to write in a slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. That is the form that we use here in 8th grade. So let's break this equation down some. Okay, so in the equation y equals mx plus b, what we have is our main focus is going to be our m and our b. Okay, where m is the slope. And what we learned about slope, we can call slope rise over run. We can also call slope our rate of change. And for us, when we found rate of change, we found it as being constant rate of change. Okay, so these are some names that we call slope. Okay, the other one, now this is new to us, which is the b. Now the b is actually the point on a graph where it crosses your y-axis. That's why they call the b your y-intercept. So on every graph, you have an x and a y-axis line, and this b represents where the actual graph line crosses your y-axis. That's why we call it again the y-intercept. Now with that, they give us an ordered pair. That ordered pair represents where x will be 0 and your b is any number on your y-axis. Okay, so that's any value, any y value of the y-intercept. So any y value of your y-intercept. Okay? And another key fact about this is that really another name we get, especially like in word problems, they call it your initial value. This is our start point. And sometimes you will hear me refer it to as your start point. So we're going to write start point. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, so when we go on a graph, so we are going to have our graphs, and on our coordinate planes, in every coordinate plane you got an x-axis and you have a y-axis. Okay, the y-axis is what we're looking at when we have to identify, when we have to identify our b, which is our y-intercept. That's the only axis that we look for, and we're looking to see, just to give you an example, where does the actual line that we drew, or they give us, cross your y-axis. So the green line is my y-axis in this example. The line that they gave us was the red one. And what we notice is that in that, they cross right here at this point. And by them crossing at that point, that's an example of what we can consider to be our y-intercept. Because that's where the two lines actually will meet. One on being my y-axis, the other one being the line that they gave. Okay, so that's just a breakdown of what we have for what we're looking for. We're looking to put every equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, and we have to find the two important things from that equation, which is our m and our b, which is our slope and our y-intercept. Now the x and the y from that actual equation is any point on the line. So I'm going to write that over here in the corner. So we'll have that to refer back to later. So x and y is any point on the line that is given, okay? But our focus will be m and b. All right, so let's get to work. So looking at this one, it says this is what we're trying to accomplish. We're going to write an equation of a line given a graph. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we know we have to write down y equals mx plus b, because that's the format that we have to follow. Okay, so when we write our equation, we're following that format. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to use two good points on the graph, okay, to find slope. So before we do anything else, we're going to find us 2 points on the line, and we're going to use those 2 points to find the slope. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to find the y-intercept of the graph, meaning where did it cross your y-axis, okay? And the fourth thing we're going to do is we're going to substitute those values that we found into our equation y equals mx plus b, and then our equation will be in slope-intercept form. So let's accomplish these steps. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to write y equals mx plus b down. Okay, so by us having to find that, the key focus is what my m will equal and what my b will equal. Okay, so the first thing now that we know what we have written down, what we're looking for, it says we got to use 2 good points. Now in this problem, they already identified problem points for us, and that's fine. So we're going to identify the 2 good points that we want to use. You can use any 2 points that are on the line. It just have to be good points, okay? Good points meaning they sit in the center of our axis line. So just as an example, you see how the background in this graph is light gray. The line that they gave is solid black, okay? And then you see the green dot that I made, how it sits dead center of the light gray of the crosshairs. I call it crosshairs. So that is a good point, okay? So that's a good point to use. So let's find slope. In order for us to find slope, we'll take 1 point and we're going to make a line extending up, okay? And then the other dot we're going to take and extend it to make a right triangle. Okay, so once our right triangle is made, what we're counting is the blocks outside of the right triangle. So from one point to the line where they intersect, which is here. So I'm going to put this one in red so we know that we're working with 2 different colors. Okay, so from that point that we're going to start with to the line where they intersect, which is here, how many units or how many blocks are in between? So we got 1, 2, 3 blocks in between. So I'm going to write a 3 here, okay? And then on the other side, same concept. I'm going to start at the dot and I'm going to count to where they cross. So when I do that, it's going to give me 1, 2, 3 on this side. Okay, remember when we talked about slope being rise over run? So my rise in this case was 3. My run in this case was also 3. And then I look at the tilt of my line, whether it's positive, negative, undefined, or 0. So like in this case, we got a positive slope because of the tilt of the line. It started low from my left side, starts low, ended up higher as I move right. So that's a positive slope. So 3 over 3 can be simplified to be 1 over 1, which is really nothing but 1. Okay, now with my slope being 1, we know that. Now we look to see where did it cross my y-axis. So if I go to my y-axis and I follow down to wherever the line crossed, it crossed right here at a positive 1. So my y-intercept is positive 1. Okay, now once I get all that, the m and b, all I have to do is substitute it in, and then I have my final equation. So if I go to substitute it in, I keep my y. The m we just found out was a 1. Okay, the x will stay. So the x and y will always be in the equation. And my b that I found was a positive 1. Okay, so in my y equals mx plus b, what I replaced was I replaced my m and my positive b with the numbers that I found. Okay, so that's us substituting in what we just found. Okay, so now let's look at another example. Alright, so let's find the equation of this line. So first thing first, we're going to write down our equation. That's the template that we follow. We got y equals mx plus b. And out of that template, we have to find the m and the b. Okay, in order for us to find m, we need 2 good points. 2 good points. So let's skim our line and see if we can find us some good points. So as I skim my line, I notice here, you see at this point right here, this is where it do sit in the center. That's perfect. So I can use that point. So I'm going to mark it. Okay? But I need 2 good points. So let's keep skimming and see if we can get us another one. Oh, there go one right there. So right here at this point, there's another good point. So I'm going to mark that one as well. Okay? Once I get them marked, I'm going to make my lines. I'm going to take one, bring it up. The other line I'm going to take and I'm going to bring it to meet that other line. Okay? So I'm going to count my rise and my run outside of my lines from one dot to where they intersect. So if I count that, it's going to be 1, 2, 3 on this side. Then from my other dot to where they cross, it's going to be 1. So my rise in this case was a 3. My run was a 1. And looking at the tilt of my line yet again, it started low. As I moved right, it went up. So that's a positive. Okay? So I got my M. Once I get my M, I go to my y-axis, take my finger, skim down until I get to the line where they drew. This is what they drew, and it crossed at a -4. So that means my B is -4. Now I can simplify M just a little bit more and just make it to a +3. That's the same thing as 3 over 1 using just a +3. So now let's substitute to make our equation. Y will stay. M we found was a +3. You can put +3 or you can leave it as just 3. I put my X behind it, and my B was a -4. So my equation is here. Okay? Let's move on to another example. Alright, so in this example, same concept. Go ahead and jot down what I need. I need y equals mx plus b. Because everything I need out of that is my m and my b. If I can find those 2 things, I can write my equation. Let's get the 2 points that I need, starting from the closest one to my left side of my graph. This is my left side. Closest point is here. So if I skim that line, I'm looking for a good point. There's a good point right here. So I'm going to mark it. You can use any point on that line. It don't matter where it is, as long as it's on the line that is given. And we're going to go and see if we can find us another one. Oh, there's another good one. So we're going to mark that one. Now, once we get those 2 good points, we're going to take one dot. We're going to extend it up and down. It don't matter which one goes up and down. As long as one go up and down, and the other one is going to make and connect to the line you may go up and down. So that way it can make a right triangle. Now with that, we count our rise over run. So my rise in this case was 3. My run was 1. Okay, so I'm going to put my rise 3 over 1, which is 3. But look at the slant of that line. It started higher, but as I went to the right, it got low. So that's a negative. So that's a -3. Alright, so once I get that, go to my y-axis, take my finger, skim down to the point where they cross. They crossed at a -4. So I drop down my -4, write my equation as y equals -3x minus 4. Okay, so that's my answer for that. Alright, let's continue. Alright, so in this example, we got one more example, and then from there, we have some practice problems that I want you to complete at the end of this last example. Okay? Y equals mx plus b is always the starting point. What I'm looking for is my m and my b. If I can fill in those 2 things, I can make my equation. So I need 2 points. So if I skim my line, there's a point right here. Skim my line some more from that point, there's another point. Alright, make my right triangle, one going up and down. The other one going to meet that line that I drew up and down. So that gives me my right triangle. Okay, then I count from my dot to where they cross. On this side was 1. From the dot where they cross on this side was 3. So in this case, my rise was 1. My run was 3. Looking at the tilt of my line, from the left side, as I follow it and go into the right, it's going down. So that's a negative. Alright, my y-intercept, I go to my y-axis, skim down my line to where I see where they cross, and they cross that at -2. So my b is -2. So I write my equation. Y equals -1/3 x minus 2. And that's the answer for that one. That's how you write the equation of that line. So every time you go to write an equation, there's 2 things you look for. That's your slope and your y-intercept. Once you find your slope and your y-intercept, you fill in the missing pieces, which is your m and b in your slope-intercept form, and then you'll have your equation of your line. Now from there, I want you to pause the video at this example. I want you to complete this example. Now that you have completed examples 5, now complete example 6. Pause your video and complete example 6. Complete example 7. So pause the video to complete example 7. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now that you have completed your examples, we're going to review these in class. If you have any questions, please let me know.